acting like sheep. Why are they acting like sheep? They should be better than that. The question is whether there is a case to answer that he misled this House and has failed to correct the record.
Kemi Badenoch has just delivered a brutal attack in the Commons, accusing Starmer of shocking lies that have sent Parliament into chaos. What started as a routine exchange has now escalated into serious claims of misleading the House and a possible cover-up. This is a direct clash over truth, trust, and accountability at the highest level.
The question today, as the Speaker said, is whether this should go to the Privileges Committee, whether this House and Labour MPs really believe in full due process, whether Labour MPs have the integrity to refer the Prime Minister to the Privileges Committee, knowing what we all know and can all read in Hansard.
This is where it stopped feeling like normal politics to me and started feeling serious. In the Commons, it was a direct accusation that the Prime Minister misled Parliament. That matters, because once that line is crossed, it's not about debate anymore. It opens the door to a formal investigation, even the Privileges Committee.
The very next day, at Prime Minister's questions, the Prime Minister read out selective quotes from Sir Ollie Robbins' evidence to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. The Prime Minister told the House, and I quote, "No pressure existed whatsoever in relation to this case." That is not what the record shows.
What stood out to me was how Kemi Badenoch broke it down. Starmer said clearly there's no pressure existed whatsoever, straightforward, confident. But then you look at what Sir Ollie Robbins actually said, constant pressure and an atmosphere of constant chasing. That's not a small gap. That's two completely different versions of reality.
Throughout January, my office and the Foreign Secretary's office were under constant pressure. There was an atmosphere of constant chasing. So how can the Prime Minister tell us that Sir Ollie Robbins said no pressure existed whatsoever?
And I can't ignore this part. Badenoch isn't just saying it's wrong, she's saying it was selective. Those key parts were left out, because when you remove constant pressure, you don't simplify the statement, you change it. That's what makes it uncomfortable. It raises a serious question. Was this an error or was it deliberate?
And at various points today, so was the sense of jeopardy at the very top of government.
It's clear that full due process was not followed. If Labour MPs allow the whips to force them to block the consequences of these decisions, it will degrade not just them, but this House.
Then I look deeper, and it gets harder to dismiss. The pressure inside government wasn't subtle. Officials were being pushed, the Foreign Office was being chased, timelines were tight. It feels forced, and I keep asking myself the same thing. Why the rush? This was a major diplomatic appointment. Normally, you'd expect full checks, especially security vetting, but here, the appointment appears to have been pushed through before vetting was complete. That alone is a red flag. The Cabinet Secretary had already outlined what proper process should look like, yet those steps don't seem to have been followed. Even the National Security Advisor described it as weirdly rushed. That's coming from inside, not critics.
We asked for the release of documents, and then when the evidence came showing what the Cabinet Secretary had said in November 24 about what full due process was, it was very clear that those instructions had not been followed.
Then there's the Foreign Office, reportedly sidelined during key stages. That's not minor. That's central to the process. So when Badenoch keeps saying that is not due process, it lands.
The fact that MPs like me are being whipped into voting against this motion is, in my view, wrong, Mr. Speaker. It has played into the terrible narrative that there is something to hide, and good, decent colleagues will be accused of being complicit in a cover-up.
And it doesn't stop there. The vetting issue gets worse. Some claims suggest officials even argued full vetting wasn't needed. Security concerns were raised, but they didn't slow anything down. That doesn't look like caution. It looks like urgency overriding judgment.
What we have here is a prime example of why the British public has lost confidence. We are trying to shield and hide from the public the truth. Does the right honourable member agree that in order to restore that trust, this Prime Minister must be put in front of a committee?
Sir Philip Barton described being given a decision with no room to challenge it. No discussion, just direction. And the sequence itself was flipped. Announcement before vetting. That's not normal. At that point, I don't see a process being followed. I see a decision being pushed through. And when explanations come later, they start to feel like they're built after the fact. That's why the word cover-up enters the conversation. And honestly, I can see why it sticks.
We also know that this latest information about the problems with the security vetting did not come from the humble address, it came from a leak to The Guardian. So why should we wait for a never-never process that is clearly not happening?
What makes this worse is how information has come out. Key details didn't emerge through official transparency. They came through media leaks, particularly reports that exposed gaps in the process. At the same time, Parliament had already voted to have documents released. That should have settled the issue. Instead, there were delays, more waiting, more unanswered questions. From where I'm standing, it starts to feel like the full picture isn't being openly shared.
I mean, here we have the entire reputation of the Prime Minister of this country, the leader of their party, and they're not turning out for him because they know that he is now a laughingstock, and having called round them, they found out they had to put a 3-line whip to get them to protect his blushes.
Then there's Starmer's response. He's been asked a direct question multiple times. Did he personally speak to Mandelson before the appointment? It's a simple question, but it hasn't received a clear answer. Not during PMQs, not in debates, and not afterward. And that's significant because the ministerial code requires ministers to correct any misleading statements at the earliest opportunity. That hasn't happened here. And honestly, when I see that, the silence starts to stand out more than anything else.
On the 4th of February, if she wasn't going to wait for the outcome of that, why is she moving this process today?
Yes, I think that is an excellent question. We asked for the release of documents, and then when the evidence came showing what the Cabinet Secretary had said in November 24 about what full due process was, it was very clear that those instructions had not been followed.
This is where Badenoch escalates the argument. She frames it as a potential case of contempt of Parliament. Whether that's proven or not isn't the immediate issue. The issue is that the absence of clear answers starts to matter just as much as the answers themselves. Silence begins to carry weight, and I think that's exactly what's happening here.
It is about the Prime Minister being held to account. To those people saying this is a stunt, this is about whether the Prime Minister is accountable, not just to the opposition, but to them and their own constituents.
That leads directly to the central confrontation, the Privileges Committee. The key point is often misunderstood. This isn't about declaring guilt, it's about deciding whether there's enough concern to investigate. Badenoch's argument is that MPs aren't being asked to judge the outcome, only whether the process should be examined.
A note from the Cabinet Minister a year after the appointment, after Peter Mandelson had been sacked, after I asked questions at the dispatch box, is not an exoneration, it is part of the cover-up.
There's also a clear contrast with past cases. Similar situations have been referred for investigation without forcing MPs to follow a strict party line. This time, however, Labour MPs are being whipped to block the referral. That changes the dynamic completely. It turns a procedural question into a political one, and I keep coming back to the same thought. If there's confidence that nothing improper happened, then an investigation would only confirm that. So why block it?
That if they vote against this motion today, they are admitting that Labour has lower standards and should be held to a lower standard than everyone else. Because when they were elected, they promised their constituents integrity and higher standards, and I'm sure for most of them at the time they meant it.
All right, this is where I start looking less at Starmer and more at the people sitting behind him, because now it's on them. And honestly, this is the uncomfortable part. Kemi Badenoch basically turns around and asks Labour MPs, "What kind of people are you?" And when I hear that, it doesn't sound like politics anymore. Instead, it sounds like a test. If I put myself in their position, it's messy. On one side, you've got the party telling you exactly how to vote. Stay loyal, follow the whip, don't break ranks. On the other side, you've spent months telling voters you stand for integrity and higher standards. And now those two things don't line up. Badenoch makes it very clear. If they block this investigation, they're basically admitting those standards don't apply to their own side. That's a hard thing to defend, and I can feel that tension just watching it unfold.
So it is very wrong for them to be talking about a stunt. This is about the integrity of this House. Why is the Privileges Committee only a political stunt when Labour is in the dock? Do they still believe that honesty and accountability matter when it is one of their own?
Then comes the part that really makes me pause. The whole "this is a stunt" argument. That's the official line. Brush it off, make it sound small. But when I look at it, it doesn't add up. This isn't just one group making noise. There's cross-party support here. Different MPs, different sides, all backing the same call. That doesn't feel like a stunt to me. That feels like something people genuinely want looked at. And when Badenoch calls out MPs for repeating that stunt line over and over, I get what she's doing. She's basically saying, are you actually thinking this through or just repeating what you've been told? And once that idea lands, it's hard to ignore. Because if it really is nothing, then why fight so hard to shut it down?
That the government showed a dismissive attitude to vetting and even argued that Peter Mandelson did not need any vetting. That is not due process. I'll give way in a moment.
Then I step back and look at the bigger picture she's painting. It's not just this one issue, it's a pattern. Policies are being pushed hard, then suddenly reversed. MPs are losing the whip for taking a stand, only for the leadership to U-turn later anyway. And when I look at that, it starts to feel like loyalty only works one way. You're expected to back the leadership no matter what, but that support doesn't always come back. That's where the scorched earth idea hits. Badenoch's basically saying people are being thrown under the bus to protect the top. Advisors, officials, names come and go, but the pattern stays the same. And if I were one of those MPs sitting there, I'd be thinking, what happens when it's my turn?
That even the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff says that it shouldn't have been him doing the due diligence, and that what he got back from Mandelson wasn't the full truth, but the Prime Minister appointed Peter Mandelson anyway.
Because this doesn't stay inside Parliament. I think about how this looks to the public. People already don't trust politics the way they used to. And when they see something like this, it just adds to that frustration. It makes everything feel closed off. That's why this final argument sticks with me. Badenoch keeps bringing it back to one simple point. If there's nothing wrong, then an investigation should clear it up. Simple. But blocking it? That just raises more questions.
This is no longer just about the appointment of Peter Mandelson or the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. This is about whether or not the Prime Minister should be referred for contempt of Parliament.
And this is where I think the real pressure lands. MPs aren't just voting on a motion, they're choosing what they stand for, loyalty to leadership or openness to scrutiny. And I can't shake this thought. Whatever they choose here, it's going to follow them. Not just today, not just this debate, but long after all of this is over. So when I look at this moment, it doesn't feel small. It feels like one of those decisions that defines people. And the big question still sitting there is, are they going to let the truth be tested or just move on and hope it fades away?